Hold on tight, folks. Straight from Red Deer County, it's the Guillaume Clou Sans Tete experience. Your rugged, sharp, trusty headless nail is here to hammer home the truth.
Salut, mes amis, and howdy from the porch swing here in Red Deer County, Alberta, on this fine September 27th, 2025. The harvest moon's hanging low and full like a lantern over the golden fields, casting a silvery glow that makes the aspens shimmer like they're dancing in the breeze. There's a crisp Chinook wind whispering through, warming up what could have been a chilly night, carrying that sweet scent of baled hay and earth after a long day's work. I've got my trusty mug steaming with a fresh brew. Roasted up some of them Alberta broad beans from the garden, ground 'em coarse with a dash of chicory root and dandelion for that robust caffeine-free kick that tastes like homegrown freedom, no jitters from Ottawa's overtaxed imports. Pull up a stump or a hay bale, folks, and let's settle in for another episode of Prairie Pulse, where we cut through the liberal cow manure with straight talk sharper than a barbed wire fence. Tonight we're diving into something that's been gnawing at me like a burr under the saddle. Ottawa's so-called gun buyback program. So don't tell your dim-witted friends, but let's chew the fat on why this whole mess is sticking in my craw. All right, friends, grab a log and sit close to the fire, figuratively speaking, since we're out here under the stars. Nights like this, with the coyotes howling faint in the distance, and the prairies stretching out endless, are perfect for straight talking, the kind that clears the air like a good Chinook melting away the snow. I want to chew over this whole gun buyback business Ottawa keeps drumming up, and I'll tell you why it's been sticking in my craw worse than a bad batch of feed. Now, first things first, they say this buyback program is about making Canadians safer. Sounds nice, right? Like a warm blanket on a frosty morning. Trouble is, it don't match the facts one iota. Most of the gun crime in this country ain't coming from guys like me or my neighbor Jed with our licenses tucked away, guns locked tight in a safe, and a respect for the law drilled into us from our grandpappies. No, sir, it's illegal guns smuggled across that big leaky border from the States, traded in back alleys darker than a moonless night, tied up with gangs and drug pushers running roughshod through the cities. Everybody knows it, mes amis, even the folks in Ottawa if they'd admit it. Heck, even their own safety minister got caught on a hot mic admitting he don't think the program's worth much more than a hill of beans. When the man leading the charge don't believe in his own plan, that's about all you need to know. It's like a cowboy selling a lame horse and admitting it won't run. And yet, here they are, still pushing it harder than a plow through clay soil. Why? Well, let's call it what it is. Lazy politics, plain and simple. It's easier for a left-leaning government to stage a photo op of rifles being loaded into a shredder, flashing grins for the cameras, than it is to roll up their sleeves and tackle the real varmints. Gangs operating like shadows in Toronto and Vancouver, drug trafficking flooding our streets with fentanyl and meth, or the mental health crises that leave folks desperate and forgotten. Those are the tough jobs, the messy ones, the ones that take years, maybe decades to show results, like breaking a wild Mustang or mending a fence after a storm. But smash a few rifles on camera, instant headline, quicker than a jackrabbit. Looks good in Toronto condo towers, makes folks in Montreal clap their hands, and costs them nothing but other people's property. Our property out here where we use those tools for hunting, protecting livestock from predators, or just keeping the family tradition alive. That ain't real work, folks. That's virtue signaling, making yourself feel noble without fixing a blessed thing like polishing your boots while the barn burns. Now, don't get me wrong, I always thought the left talked a big game about caring for people. You know, the downtrodden, the struggling families. But what do we see in action? Do they fund treatment centers for addictions, building them up in rural spots where opioid crises hit hard? Do they back our cops with real resources to go after gangs, giving them the tools to bust smuggling rings at the border? Do they invest in family supports like community programs to keep kids from getting recruited into street life, or mental health hotlines that actually answer? Not much, mes amis. Not near enough. Instead, they pour their time and our tax dollars into going after the easy targets. The hunters tracking deer in the bush, the farmers like me who keep a shotgun handy for coyotes raiding the chicken coop, the sport shooters practicing at the range on weekends, law-abidin folks already following the rules, jumping through hoops for licenses, background checks, and storage regs. It's like blaming the sober driver for the drunk's wreck. Out here in Alberta, we got a premier who sees through that game clearer than a mountain stream. Danielle Smith said, plain as day. Alberta won't be cooperating with Ottawa's gun grab. She's invoking our provincial powers to shield us from this federal overreach, and she's right to stand her ground like a bull defending his herd. Because this ain't just about firearms, it's about fairness and sovereignty. Why punish the folks doing everything by the book when the real problem's criminals laughing all the way across the border with smuggled pistols tucked in their belts? You want to stop violence, you go after the gangs and the smugglers, beef up border patrols, crack down on illegal imports, and hit them where it hurts. Not Joe Farmer with his deer rifle handed down from his pa, used once a year to put food on the table. Now, let me pull back and give you a wider view, like stepping out to the edge of the Badlands and seeing the whole horizon. Down south, the Americans got their Second Amendment baked right into their Constitution. That's the right to bear arms, and it ain't just for hunting ducks or defending your homestead from intruders. The founders wrote it in so folks could protect themselves from tyranny, from their own government if it ever turned sour like milk left in the sun. That's the heartbeat of their freedom, a check against power run amok. We've seen it play out. Armed citizens standing as a bulwark, reminding politicians they're servants, not kings. We don't have that exact clause in Canada. Here, gun ownership is called a privilege, not a right. Legally, Ottawa can take it away with the stroke of a pen. But here's the rub, scratching my head like a thorn in the boot. When you see a government bending the truth, using weak arguments and cherry-picked stats to justify confiscating property from law-abiding citizens, folks start wondering, is this really about safety? Or is it about control? About chipping away at our self-reliance, making us more dependent on the state for protection? Now, I ain't saying Trudeau's sitting up there in his ivory tower planning tyranny with a mustache-twirling grin, but I am saying this. When a government chooses the shortcut, the lazy route over the hard truth, it plants seeds of mistrust deeper than a prairie well, and mistrust's a mighty dangerous crop to sow, growing wild and hard to uproot. Once people believe their freedoms are being chipped away under false pretenses, like claiming this'll stop urban shootings when the data shows most crimes are with handguns, not long guns, it don't matter what fancy words Ottawa spins. Out here, we can smell the difference between honest sweat and cheap cologne, between real policy and poll-driven pandering. And history. Well, history's got lessons on this sharper than a skinning knife. Look at Germany before the Second World War. The Nazis didn't strip everybody of their guns right off. They targeted the Jews and other undesirables, using registration records from the Weimar era to knock on doors and confiscate weapons systematically. That disarmament made it easier to round up and persecute a whole group of people, leaving them defenseless. Now, guns weren't the only reason the Holocaust happened, not by a long shot, with propaganda, economic woes, and hatred fueling the fire. But taking away that ability to resist sure didn't help, and millions suffered unimaginable horrors. Look at Russia, the old Soviet Union under Stalin. They clamped down on firearms hard after the revolution, bringing everything under state control, making sure only the Red Army and secret police had the firepower. Same in China under Mao, he famously said. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. And his regime ensured the party commanded all the guns, disarming civilians to crush dissent. In both those countries, it wasn't about protecting citizens from crime. It was about controlling them, suppressing uprisings, and enforcing ideology. Millions paid the price in gulags, famines, and purges, tens of millions if you tally the dead. Now, Canada ain't Nazi Germany, and it sure ain't Stalin's Russia or Mao's China. We've got strong courts, a free press mostly, but the opposition parties hollering from the benches, and elections to boot the bums out. But here's the thing, friends. History warns us about what happens when governments think they know better than the people. When they use laws to chip away at freedoms bit by bit, starting with the easy ones like rural gun owners. It starts with good intentions, or so they say, but ends with folks feeling squeezed. So when I hear Ottawa crowing about this buyback, spending billions on it, by the way, while our hospitals wait for funding, I don't see a plan for safety. I see lazy government virtue-signalin, taking the easy path over the hard one, while the real issues, gangs importing guns from Detroit or Chicago, drugs poisoning our kids, poverty driving desperation, mental health left to fester, keep boiling over like a pot forgotten on the stove. I see city politicians cheering for headlines that play well in urban ridings, while rural Canadians like us get treated like the problem, our traditions and tools painted as threats. And I'll tell you plain, that's why Danielle Smith's stand matters more than ever. She's saying Alberta won't play along with bad policy. We'll use our provincial police, if need be, or whatever tools we've got to protect our folks, that will defend law-abidin citizens instead of punishing them for crimes they ain't committing, that we won't let Ottawa's lazy politics trample common sense or our way of life. Premier Smith's pushing for Alberta sovereignty within Canada, reminding Ottawa we're partners, not subjects, and that's the kind of backbone we need. So yeah, sit here by the fire, or out under these stars tonight, look up at the Big Dipper pointing north and think on it. Safety don't come from taking rifles away from farmers who follow every rule. Safety comes from tough work, securing borders with real patrols, breaking up gangs with undercover ops and stiff sentences, giving kids hope through jobs and education so they don't end up in crime's grip. That's the sweat and soil kind of work, the kind that builds strong communities, the kind we understand out here on the prairies, where self-reliance ain't a slogan, it's survival. And that's the truth of it, friends. Out here on the prairie, we see through the smoke, whether it's from a campfire or Ottawa's spin machine. We know what's real, what's earned, and this buyback, it ain't real safety. It's politics. Lazy, shiny, virtue-signalin politics dressed up as compassion, and we won't be fooled, not one bit. What do you reckon, amis? Is Ottawa's gun grab just more lazy liberal politics, or can Alberta's stand turn the tide? Hit the replies. A, dang right, it's a virtue signal scam. B, Premier Smith needs to hold the line federally. C, share your own ranch tales on guns and safety. Spread this Prairie Pulse far and wide. Link it, tweet it to your MPs, and let's rally for common sense over control. That's the pulse from the prairies tonight. Keep your boots dusty, your heart true, and your powder dry. Until next time, this is Clou Sans Tete signing off. Take your Prairie Pulse. Alberta strong, Canada first. Gun buyback scam. No to liberal laziness. Danielle Smith outro song fades in with acoustic guitar strums, harmonica swells, and a steady banjo rhythm. Warm, gravelly male voice sings over it. That's the pulse from the prairies today. Keep your boots dusty, your heart true, and your fight strong. Mes amis, stand tall for Alberta's way. This is Clou Sans Tete signing off. So long.
That's the pulse from the prairies today. Keep your boots dusty, your heart true, and your fight strong. Mesa me stand tall for Alberta's way. This Clou Sans Tete signing off. So long.